Many people dream of studying abroad, experiencing new cultures, and broadening their horizons, right? And that's exactly what Aiia Maasarwe, a 21-year-old Palestinian-Israeli woman, had done in 2018. She left China and traveled to Australia in search of a bright future, carrying with her the hope of changing her life and becoming fluent in another language. But what should have been an incredible experience of growth and discovery became an unimaginable nightmare. On her way home after a day of studying and a meet-up with friends at a comedy show, Aiia was brutally attacked, raped, and murdered. What's even more shocking is that at the time of the attack, she was on the phone with her sister, who heard her desperate screams but couldn't do anything. Aiia Maasarwe was a Palestinian citizen of Israel living in Melbourne, a city in the state of Victoria, Australia. She had been in Melbourne since August 2018, doing a one-year exchange program at La Trobe University in Bundoora. Before that, Aiia had studied at a university in Shanghai, China, and was an international student majoring in English and Chinese. She took her studies very seriously, and the exchange program in Australia was meant to improve her English. There, she explored new places, tried new things, and made many friends. She was extremely excited and loving the experience. She could have chosen New York for the exchange program, but she opted for Australia, believing it to be a calm, pleasant, and safer place. Aiia was a very intelligent young woman, already fluent in several languages including Arabic, Hebrew, and Mandarin. However, since she still had some difficulty with English, she was studying to become fluent. She was also very close to her family, and even though they were far away, they spoke to each other every day. The family consisted of 6 members, her parents Sahid and Dum, and her sisters Noor, Ruba, and Lena. They were excited to visit Aiia in Australia on a family trip. On January 16, 2019, a Wednesday, 21-year-old Aiia Maasarwe went out to meet some friends, and they attended a comedy show in northern Melbourne. When the show ended, one of her friends walked her to Burke Street, where she was going to catch the train that would take her closer to her student dormitory. She did, and got off at the nearest station, Plenty Street. This was around midnight. Aiia crossed the street and walked along Main Drive near the Polaris Shopping Centre in Bundoora. While on this route, she called Ruba, one of her sisters, as she always did to feel safer. Even though they were miles apart, living in different countries on different continents, they felt secure talking to each other. Ruba answered, but all she could hear was her sister's voice shouting and screaming insults in Arabic. Ruba heard her sister say, "You piece of shit." And shortly after, she heard what sounded like someone being struck repeatedly. Then all she could hear was the sound of cars. She thought this was very strange, became very anxious, and called their other sister, who was living in China at the time. The 2 sisters then tried desperately to reach Aiia by calling and sending messages, but there was no answer. Unable to get through, the sisters decided that the best course of action was to contact the Australian police. At 6 a.m. the following day, a man on his way to work found a woman's body behind a fence near the train station. As you might have guessed, the body belonged to Aiia. She was found about 328 feet from the stop where she had gotten off, and less than 1.2 miles from where she had been living in the city. The man quickly called the police, who arrived at the scene and confirmed that a homicide had occurred there. Aiia had head injuries and burn marks on her body. She had also been the victim of sexual assault. This brutal crime shook the local residents, who were outraged that something like this could happen in their area. The victim's father quickly arrived in the city to identify the body, and the Israeli embassy assisted the family in returning it to Israel, to the Arab-Israeli city of Baqa al-Gharbi, north of Tel Aviv. When Aiia's body arrived in the city, thousands of people were waiting, and the crowd followed the procession to the mosque. Shops and schools were closed that day to allow everyone to participate. Aiia Maasarwe was an award-winning student, and children from her former school marched with banners denouncing violence against women. During the investigation, the police found a cap with the 1986 logo and a blood-stained T-shirt about 100 meters from where Aiia's body was found. They also found a metal bar, which was also bloodied, and an aerosol can of WD-40 spray. The police suspected that these items might belong to the perpetrator and decided to have them analyzed. It was later confirmed that the blood on the T-shirt and metal bar was the same and belonged to Aiia. The police checked all the security camera footage from the route Aiia took that night. They also spoke with several people who were nearby at the time of the crime and reviewed a list of registered criminals living in the area. For the detectives, the attack on Aiia was random and opportunistic. They did not believe that someone who knew her was responsible for the crime. It could have been someone simply passing by who saw an opportunity to commit such an atrocity. 2 days after the crime, the police arrested a 21-year-old man named Cody Herman. The police identified him through footage captured by security cameras at the Polaris shopping center. Subsequently, the 2 items found near the crime scene and sent for analysis were linked to him. Initially, Cody denied everything and said he hadn't done anything to anyone. However, a few days later, he confessed to the crime. Cody Herman is of Aboriginal descent and had been living a socially isolated life. For those who don't know, Aboriginal refers to the native peoples of Australia. Cody had an extremely troubled childhood. Before he even turned 1 year old, specifically at 6 months, a relative gave him a bottle of wine, and he drank almost all of it. When Cody was 1 year old, he was abandoned by his mother, who was addicted to drugs. After that, he was put up for adoption. At 17 months, he was hospitalized after contracting scabies, a result of the neglect from his caregivers. When he was 3 years old, the family caring for him was reported by neighbors due to constant fights and the use of illicit substances. Due to all these family issues and neglect, Cody ended up with several rotten teeth and suffered from skin problems as a young child. When he started school under the care of a new adoptive mother, he already had aggressive behavior and didn't like interacting with other children. He used to bite and hit his classmates, so he had to be isolated. Before the trial, vigils were held with silent marches to the state parliament in central Melbourne, and the group remained there for several hours. At the crime scene, a memorial was created in honor of Aiia. Hundreds of people brought flowers and notes to pay tribute to the young student. Since Cody confessed to the crime and later reached a deal with the prosecution, the jury was dismissed. But he had to appear in court for the facts to be clarified and documented. In court, it was stated that Aiia and Cody didn't know each other, but he had seen her at the same location where he attacked her. This is because the route Aiia took that night was one she frequently traveled. As a result, Cody had seen her there several times before. It was discovered that Cody had followed Aiia without her noticing. His intention was to find an opportunity to attack her, but this hadn't been possible earlier because there were people on the street, so he backed off on more than one occasion. Cody tried to enter the apartment complex where Aiia lived. According to testimony from neighbors, Cody approached some residents of the complex, claiming he had lost his keys and needed help getting into his apartment. The residents found his story suspicious and told him they couldn't help, suggesting he contact the building manager to resolve the issue. This happened only a few days before the crime. After that day, he was seen several more times loitering around the exterior of the complex. All indications suggest that Cody had been stalking Aiia for some time and was determined to commit the crime. In court, the prosecution presented 2 social media profiles belonging to the defendant. In one of these profiles, he went by the name MC Codes, where he claimed to be a rapper whose music lyrics always talked about violence. In the other profile, he went by Cody Rex, where he wrote about random life topics. One of the things he wrote caught the authorities' attention, as it was about a foreign girl living in Australia. He wrote this a week before committing the crime. However, despite the similarities with Aiia, the investigators concluded that the girl in this post wasn't the victim, but possibly another woman Cody had also been stalking. According to the investigation, while Aiia was at the comedy show with her friends, Cody was already at the shopping center. After leaving the mall, he took a shortcut through the parking lot, which led him to Main Drive, the same street Aiia was walking down that night. When Cody saw the victim, he began to follow her. Aiia likely noticed and started shouting at him to stay away. At that moment, Cody approached her with a metal pipe and struck her 4 times in the head. Aiia had just called her sister, who, when she answered, could only hear Aiia shouting and then the sound of the metal pipe hitting her. After being struck repeatedly in the head, Aiia lost consciousness. Cody then took advantage of this and dragged the victim to an area behind a low fence between the sidewalk and the parking lot. This area, being more isolated, also obstructed the view of anyone who might pass by due to the fence there. Cody removed some of Aiia's clothing and then raped her. Afterward, he struck her head with a metal pipe 9 more times, intending to kill her. These blows caused multiple fractures to her skull and face, with lacerations to her brain. Still not satisfied, Cody dragged Aiia's body to a bush area and sprayed WD-40 WD-40 fluid from an aerosol can on her. Next, he grabbed his barbecue lighter and set her body on fire. This is where the burn marks on Aiia came from. According to the coroner, there were traces of smoke in Aiia's lungs. This indicated that she was still alive when Cody set her body on fire. For those who don't know, WD-40 fluid is typically used for lubrication, rust protection, and corrosion prevention, among other uses. It is a flammable fluid that can easily catch fire when exposed to flames. The coroner also stated that Aiia's neck was severely injured, but he couldn't determine whether this was a result of an attempted strangulation by the perpetrator or because she had been dragged for several meters. Upon hearing this, Cody stated in court that he hadn't attempted to suffocate Aiia. He also claimed that he didn't know the victim and had nothing against her. He simply took advantage of the opportunity, as she was alone that night, and since no one was around, he decided to commit the crime. After committing the crime, Cody fled, taking the victim's purse and other belongings with him. As he fled, security cameras from the shopping center and nearby buildings captured him climbing the fence of a nature reserve. His black cap with the 1986 print got caught on the fence, and he had to leave it behind. It was the same cap that authorities later found about 100 meters from the crime scene. Cody also removed his shirt, leaving it behind as it was covered in blood. He did the same with the metal pipe and the WD-40 aerosol spray. All these items were also later found by authorities and became strong evidence linking the defendant to the crime. When questioned about where he had gotten the metal pipe and the WD-40 spray, Cody claimed he didn't remember. Knowing this would have been important, as it could have helped authorities understand if the crime was premeditated or not. Authorities knew it was very likely that Cody had been watching Aiia for some time. But it's possible that on that night, he intended to target any woman who happened to pass by alone. In this case, it was Aiia, whom he had already stalked before. The footage from the shopping center's internal security cameras showed that when he was inside, Cody did not yet have the metal pipe with him, but he could have hidden it somewhere in the area. If authorities could prove this, it would confirm that Cody had premeditated everything. Investigators stated that Aiia had no chance to defend herself or even escape, as Cody was quick to attack her with a metal pipe. Cody claimed that he couldn't remember anything from the 2 hours leading up to the crime. This was certainly a strategy from his defense, as they knew that if he admitted to having grabbed the metal pipe before attacking Aiia, authorities would conclude that the crime was premeditated, and he would face a harsher sentence. 2 days before Aiia was attacked, Cody reportedly told a friend that he had been having a sort of daydream in which he witnessed a murder taking place. Cody's life was completely chaotic. He had distanced himself from his adoptive mother, lived in abandoned places, and spent most of his time consuming drugs. He didn't work but received a government benefit in Australia that provided him with enough money to survive. He mostly ate croissants and chocolate drinks, and when he ran out of money, he simply stole what he wanted. The defendant's lawyer asked for it to be taken into consideration that, despite being a drug addict, Cody did not have a history of violence or previous crimes. The lawyer also mentioned that his client's lifestyle was unhealthy and that he was constantly under the influence of drugs. For the lawyer, being under the influence of illicit substances caused Cody to succumb to his impulsiveness and commit the crime. Cody had attempted drug addiction treatment in 2016, but stayed in the program for a short time before returning to drug use and living in abandoned places. The forensic psychiatrist who assessed the defendant testified in court that Cody had a severe personality disorder and displayed a primal male anger toward women. During the evaluation, Cody himself admitted to having violent thoughts about women, saying that he did not take pride in them but could not control them. His lawyer pleaded for leniency, claiming that the psychiatric report showed he had a mental disorder, which should absolve him of responsibility for the crime. The defense argued that the lack of support during Cody's childhood led him to develop a distorted view of the world, suggesting that he was not inherently a bad person but had been forced down this path against his will. Cody even wrote a letter requesting that his lawyer read it aloud to the entire court. The letter was an apology to Aiia's father and read as follows. "I'm so sorry. Your daughter did not deserve such a terrible and tragic thing to happen to her. I don't expect forgiveness because I will never be able to forgive myself, and I will try to make amends for the rest of my life. There is no excuse. I am truly sorry. I will pray for you and your family every day. Do not give in to hatred as I did. Love, goodbye." The attack on Aiia was extremely cruel and violent, a complete disregard for the humanity of the victim. Therefore, The prosecution argued that no leniency should be granted to Cody regardless of any factors. The prosecution requested the maximum sentence allowed in Australia, life imprisonment. The victim's family gave emotional testimonies expressing the immeasurable pain they felt. Ruba, Aiia's sister, who was on the phone with her the night of the crime, shared the agony of hearing the attack and her sister's voice for the last time without being able to do anything. She said she couldn't imagine how Aiia must have felt before it all happened. Dum, the victim's mother, spoke of her deep sorrow, stating that Aiia was not only her daughter but also her friend with whom she talked every day. Noor, another sister of Aiia, described her as a smiling girl, full of energy, and a true inspiration to the whole family. Judge Elizabeth Hollingworth, who presided over the case, emphasized that women should have the right to walk alone without fear of being violently attacked. She pointed out that Aiia was physically small, unprepared, and alone, with no chance to defend herself. Furthermore, the judge highlighted that although Cody was a regular drug user, he had never committed a violent act while under the influence before, indicating that he was fully aware of his actions that night. After 3 days of hearings, Cody Herman was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 36 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. 2 years after the trial, Aiia's father returned to Australia to establish a scholarship in her memory, aimed at students who need financial support. The project was created in partnership with Rosanna, an Australian organization that supports young Israelis and Palestinians interested in studying medicine to become doctors in Israel. He also took the opportunity to thank the Australian people and the government for the time his daughter spent in the country. Despite the tragedy, Aiia always said she was very happy there.